that would tell all new Star Wars stories against the backdrop that was at once familiar and yet a little different. And it's weekly TV animation of quality that has never been seen before on TV. Now, how many of you have caught at least some of the episodes of Clone Wars? Cool. We have a little treat for you in store in just a few minutes. One of the things that I really love about the new series is that it gives George, supervising director Dave Filoni, who you saw up there, and head writer Henry Gilroy, and the rest of a really, really talented team, the chance to tell all kinds of stories. Yeah, I mean, they're all set against this extraordinary backdrop of a battlefield and a fight that's going to determine the future of the galaxy, which we know what the future of the galaxy will be. But some of these stories are mystery stories, some are more suspense, some have political intrigue, and there's plenty of humor and character development. We really get to meet the clones for the first time, and we see that they're not all the same, that they're individuals with different looks and different personalities and some very strong views. There are new characters and new planets and new vehicles for those of you who have already memorized every single character, planet, and vehicle. And by the way, if you haven't, there's this little book coming out in December called the Star Wars Encyclopedia, but I digress. The storylines are already played out in different ways. Some are single episodes and some are multi-story arcs, such as next week when actually, that's a slight problem because next week, for the first time since the series started, we're preempted because of a very special event, Halloween. So I guess Halloween takes over Cartoon Network on that day, so they don't run the regular programming. But let me tell you about the next episode. It's a really cool one called Downfall of the Droid, and it's the first one that we've seen directed by Rob Coleman, who was the director of animation on all the prequels. Everybody's favorite droid, R2-D2, goes missing during a fierce space battle, and Anakin has to find him, get him back from the Separatists before they find all of the Jedi military secrets that are locked in R2's memory banks. Well, this isn't called Star Wars Fan Days without some reason. So if you promise you won't breathe a word to a soul outside of this room, let's take a look at the opening act of an episode that will premiere November 7th, Downfall of a Droid. And to find out in 2 weeks. You can watch it at any of 5 different times on Cartoon Network, online for several weeks on the Cartoon Network website or on StarWars.com, and you can buy individual episodes on iTunes or an entire season pass. Now, what you're looking at now is a representation of the screen of StarWars.com, which has especially rich offerings for the Clone Wars. There are in-depth episode guides for each episode, and commentaries each week, including interviews with such behind-the-scenes talent as that week's director. And the guides are really a one-stop information source for everything that you'd want to know about a given episode. This includes a detailed synopsis, trivia, facts, imagery, and links. And they're actually meant to be living documents, so we can add to each one as more information and content becomes available. There are interviews with the voice talent, brand new online comics, including several of the artists who are here now who are taking part in the online comics that lead up to each new episode. There are games, there's an in-world HoloNet podcast that brings you up to date on what else is happening in the Star Wars universe at the time that these events are taking place. And after each episode airs, the site shows a brief video commentary from supervising director Filoni, which gives some inside information about a particular aspect of that week's episode, such as how an entire railroad system came to be inside General Grievous's flagship, the Malevolence. Meanwhile, back at the cliffhanger, what's happening to Anakin and R2-D2? While I can't tell you exactly what's in the last 2 acts today, I can show you the end teaser, which will give you some idea of how the episode ends, leading to the coming attractions for the following week's episode, Duel of the Droids. Let's take a look at that. movie talent. We've been very lucky. And today we have with us 4 of the voice actors who provide some of the voices for the Clone Wars. Please join me in welcoming, first of all, Ashley Eckstein, the spunky voice of Snips, otherwise known as Ahsoka Tano. How about Tom Kane, who claims he is nowhere near 900 years old, despite doing an uncanny Yoda voice. Next, Matthew Wood, the hacking, coughing, vile villain known as General Grievous. And finally, David Acord, who will forever be begged at parties, "Ooh, please do that Road to the Hutling thing again," and has other things. Thanks a lot. So, and we'll have a chance to ask questions also from the audience. But Ashley, first of all, I understand that you went to try out for a different role for the Clone Wars and ended up being cast as Ahsoka almost because you played yourself. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Yes, I went in and auditioned for Padme, and I actually showed up to the audition, and there was a ton of people. And I remember calling my agent saying, you know, look, I'm thrilled to be here, but I'm just telling you, I can't really do Padme's voice because they wanted somebody that sounded like Natalie Portman. And he goes, you know what, just go in because you never know. And sure enough, I read the first line, and they stop me, and they go, no, your voice is too high. You don't sound like her. They're like, but we have a new character we want you to read for. And that was it. That's all they told me. They didn't tell me anything else. And they asked me to play around with just different accents. Well, I wasn't very good at that. And I walked out of the audition. I remember telling my husband, I said, there is no way I'm getting that. That was one of my worst auditions. Well, I ended up getting a call back, and I'm like, how did I get this call back? And again, they asked me to toy around with different accents. And, you know, I tried my best, but I stayed pretty composed in auditions, but for some reason I was so frustrated with myself that I couldn't give them the exact accent that they wanted. And I kind of let my guard down and let my frustration show through. And I ended up coming out, and I'm like, you know, I'm just not sure about this. I didn't feel like it was my best audition. Well, next thing I know, I get the part. And I'm like, okay, how did this happen? Well, come to find out, I still didn't know who I was playing. I knew that I was playing a new character. And I show up to the first session, and they tell me who I'm playing. And then they tell me they just want me to use my regular voice because some of my body movements and facial expressions and actions were what they were already envisioning for the character. So I guess it was a little bit of being myself, and Ahsoka is, obviously, you guys have seen, is very hard on herself and wants to be perfect and do everything right the first time, and I think just a little bit of that is why I'm here. So.
I mean, a little bit of you influences the character. Now, do you find that you sort of wake up in the middle of the night wondering whether you have those head tails or things like that? When you do a major character in a series, do they sometimes ask you to do some bit parts along the way, or you're strictly Ahsoka in this one?
Well, let's see. I'm pretty new to the voiceover realm, and so.
What is your background?
Mostly on-camera acting. I've done a lot of, children's programming, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, but. So I've done a few maybe background voices, but nothing where it's just me. So maybe I'll get in there. But I know they've had me read Yoda one time. They'll never have me do that again. Because Tom was out of town and they just wanted me to fill in. And I think they've had me read... I did do Grievous. And I did Luminara one time, but just to fill in. But Dave laughs at me.
Were you told anything, I mean, when you started, what were you told about your character when it was finally cast and you were ready to do the